Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, season 2 debuted last week, and we're still rocking and rolling here on your favorite NFL podcast that has reached the Big 5-0. Boys, we did it. We've reached 50 episodes under this branding name. We had one episode before we officially called the pod this, but that's like the pilot episode. That's episode 0. This is the Big 5-0. This is episode 50, and what a show we have for you today, particularly the main event of it's not the evening, afternoon. But before we get to that, I'm skipping way too far ahead. Let's bring it back here to the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your favorite NFL podcast, the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, as always, introducing the show to all you lovely people listening with your ears here. I don't know what else you'd listen to, but I just had to point that out specifically. Iceman Jerk. Joining me, as always, my compatriots. First, on the bottom of your screen, Justin Zuckman, Zucktails, Zuckaroony, the big Zuck. I keep trying to think of new ones. Zucker, Justin, how we doing, brother?
I'm doing well. It's nice to have the gang back together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's been a little bit. We took a couple weeks off, of course, ladies and gentlemen, before we returned last week. And as is tradition, the Podfather doesn't make the first episode of the season. We'll see if that continues for every single season we ever have. It probably will, knowing us. But yes, guys, it took a while. He literally just came out this morning. The Darkness Retreat has finally ended. Podfather Rick, we think, is back. We haven't seen him at all. We literally. Podfather, Rick, oh my God, Rick, Albus, Percival, Wulfric, Brian, Dumbledore is back. How you doing, Podfather?
Clearly, I've been away for far too long, as you can guess. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, that's the best. See, I feel like the people don't believe when we say we legitimately have no idea what Rick does on a pre-show basis. No, we had no idea. This is the best.
I had an inkling that something I was like, the Darkness Retreat. He's definitely coming back in like a robe and candles, but this was I didn't see this coming.
So I literally told Justin, it's like the only thing I'm wondering is how much will the beard have grown? Because for me and Justin, it's super easy, and Rick would admit it himself. Like, it's not easy for him to grow a beard. Me and Justin, it comes like second nature. But good God in heaven, clearly, he took something there. That's not ayahuasca or whatever that helped him grow that. So what, Rick? What the heck did you take? What have you done on your Darkness Retreat, dude? Like, what? We missed you.
Let me tell you something. I contemplated the heavens. I ascertained my position in the world. I navigated the stars. I spoke to the spirits. And they all told me the same thing. You're just going to have to deal with whatever Aaron Rodgers does. So, yeah, that's when the hair started, and then the beard followed suit. And I bargained with Dormammu for a little bit, and here we are today.
Did he kill you a million times like he did Doctor Strange?
Oh, yes. Yes, including one time he killed me with a rolling Thin Mint. So, that was interesting.
That was fun.
I didn't realize he was a Girl Scout supporter, but, here we go.
I mean, come on. Everyone supports the Girl Scouts.
Absolutely.
So there's that. Oh, my God.
I have to shave real quick, so just give me a second. Bear with me.
All good. All right. So there's that. I was very curious to see how long he would keep that on the whole time. I was curious, but to be fair,
not a chance. You can't keep that on. See, this is why you can keep it on the whole time, obviously. So
for sure.
Takes me back to my drama club days when I was in high school, the costumes and all that sort of stuff. So,
oh my God, we'll dive down that rabbit hole one day. Not today, because we do have some stuff to talk about on the show. But one day we will dive down several rabbit holes on the show. That's what the offseason is for, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, it's the NFL offseason, in case you didn't realize it. Somehow, we will have an episode where we just go down everything for everyone. Why did Justin become a Jets fan, or what is the origin point of that? What ultimately led to Rick's disdain for the New York Jets, that he may potentially have a new team by the end of today, and much more. My hatred for Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans, Rick's drama club days where, I mean, for all we know, he could have been the next Broadway play actor. Maybe in an alternate universe, Rick is the guy that is the star of Hamilton. Who knows?
Jesus.
I would pay to watch that.
Yeah.
But while we're in this timeline, in this portion of our universe, let's get to the show. We have a lot to talk about today. Free agency stuff continues, as you could probably tell by the title of the show, guys. Once again, big 5-0 for us, 50th episode. More free agency talk. More guys got signed. We're going to be talking about that. But it's more so the interest is, I know we kind of started it last week, but a lot of names, even more than we realized last week, are still on the free agency market. People who still can contribute, whether it's names that hold a lot of cachet still in this league, at least to most people. Rick might disagree on one or two of them. Whether it's, guys that still have their name power, young guys who just may need a fresh start. We got a couple of those guys here who are shockingly still on the market, or veterans that maybe, just maybe, like Christian in the WWE, they may have one more season instead of just one more match, because, signing a guy for one game isn't exactly the most cost-effective thing. But before we get to all that, you guys know how we roll. It's fun, football, and chaos. We've already had a lot of fun just in the first 6 minutes. I don't know how we're going to top it, but we are going to try to top it here. Justin has some games for us, and we're going to have a little bit of fun. It's been a few weeks. But before that, he's already started off the show amazingly well. Let's just continue it. Guys, the Podfather is back, so that means he has a mind-blowing fact.
Brought to you by Thin Mints. You knew that was coming in somewhere. So last season, I ended with the talk of Doug Williams' Super Bowl and how in that one Super Bowl, he threw as many passing touchdowns as the Denver Broncos have in what's now 8, I think. But I want to introduce you to somebody else who had played a huge role in that game, who you might not be thinking about. The gentleman that I'm talking about, his name is Barry Rudolph. And I'll explain to you why he's important. So Barry Rudolph had a very interesting job with the Washington, I'll say their name because it was at the time, they were the Redskins. They were getting ready for the Super Bowl in sunny San Diego, and Barry had a few days to himself. And, I said, listen, I'll go to the beach. It's San Diego, we're from the East Coast. Beaches here are lovely. I'll do that. He gets a call from his wife. And his wife says to him, listen, you need to go to the practice facility right now. Joe Gibbs wants to talk to you about something. Barry Rudolph says, sure, okay, whatever. I'll go and take care of that. Joe Gibbs then says to him when he gets to practice, look, something's wrong with Doug. Can you go figure out what the deal is? Barry talks to Doug Williams, and Doug Williams tells him the problem. And Barry says, okay, I have a friend here in San Diego. We're going to go see him right away. They go see the gentleman, and Doug Williams ends up having an emergency procedure the day before the Super Bowl, and then goes out, obviously, and wins the game, as talked about. But here's the part of the story I didn't really tell you about. Barry Rudolph was the Redskins team dentist at the time. Doug Williams hadn't slept for 2 nights prior to his consultation with Barry Rudolph and his other friend. It turns out that Doug Williams needed an emergency root canal surgery and was in the hospital for 6 hours the day before the Super Bowl to take an emergency abscess off of the bridge of his mouth. So Doug Williams is probably still hopped up on morphine at this time, and he goes out in the Super Bowl, and immediately Denver leads 10-0. So all of a sudden, Joe Gibbs storms down the sideline to Barry Rudolph and says, what the hell did you put in him? He's groggy. Go talk to him. So Barry Rudolph runs to Doug Williams and says, look, dude, my job's on the line. What are you doing? And Doug Williams, being the bad gentleman that he is, grins, gives him a little wink, and then goes off to know 42 unanswered points to win the Super Bowl. Which makes that whole narrative of first African-American quarterback to win a Super Bowl and start a Super Bowl even more better when you realize that were not for his dentist helping him with the problems in his mouth and the 6-hour root canal, Doug Williams might have Geno Smith and overslept the Super Bowl. Therefore, he wouldn't have been the player that we know today enshrined in the Hall of Fame as he was. So this is a call out to everyone. Go see your dentist. You never know. If you can't sleep, maybe you have an abscess and a root canal is necessary, because you could be like Doug Williams and win a Super Bowl or a quiz bowl if you're a nerd. But there you go. Mind-blowing fact. Welcome back to Season 2. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, Jack. That's wild. So a dentist helped Washington win their Super Bowl, basically, is what I got from that.
I don't know about the Mark Rippon Super Bowl. I think it was just Buffalo's incompetence. But yeah, that first Super Bowl, absolutely.
Works for me.
Yeah. Good with that.
I mean, it's a better story. Imagine you won the Super Bowl because the dentist, figured things out with your quarterback. That's awesome.
The dentist got a ring.
I'm sure he did.
I hope he did.
Let's be real here. I'm sure he did, and then I'm sure that he got a nice steak dinner courtesy of Doug Williams afterwards.
I would hope
Which
so.
then sent Doug Williams back to the dentist because steak in the teeth and all that sort of thing. So
Probably
Yeah.
it made the team dentist go see his own dentist about his teeth.
exactly.
Rick, because you find these facts, can we get him on the show?
Doug Williams or Barry Rudolph?
Both.
I will put in some calls and we'll see what we can do. Absolutely, I'll put in some calls.
I feel like it's only right if this show, the first guest we ever have on, is the dentist of the Washington, reskins from way back when. I think it's only right. If it can't be Mike Tomlin, it might as well just be a
Might
former
as well,
team
right?
dentist.
It might as well be Barry Rudolph. Sure, it's not going to be Adam Rank anytime soon. So there you go.
He is on the never going to be guest list.
Never like Trent Baalke.
That it is a long list of who is not going to be allowed to show up on the show anytime soon.
And Shailene Woodley apparently too.
I mean, I don't care. Like, she's totally fine. If you guys want D-list celebrities and actresses to be on here, so be it. Anyways, we move on from the mind-blowing
What's
fact.
happening?
You act like we've known this for 50 episodes. We have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, when you put the band back together, Justin, this is what happens.
Exactly. It's sports agents of chaos for a reason. But speaking of chaos, the fun continues. Justin, you got some trivia for us. You have a question.
Dude.
Let's see. Can we continue the hot streak? Rick and me have been on a little bit of a streak here recently when it comes to trivia questions. So let's see if we can continue it.
All right. Well, among active players, which current active player has the most rushing touchdowns in a single season?
Current active players.
I'm sorry, not rushing touchdowns. The most touchdowns in a single season.
Ah. So I mean, I'm still thinking we're in a rushing category here.
Just to clarify, you only mean receiving and rushing touchdowns, right? You don't mean
Not
passing.
touchdowns. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say because then the answer would have been really easy.
No.
Christian McCaffrey.
All right, most touchdowns, rushing and receiving in a single.
And it still could be Christian McCaffrey. He catches and rushes for a lot of touchdowns.
It could very well be. That's an accurate statement. So let's narrow this down. What are you thinking, Jerry? Are you thinking a running back or a wide receiver?
I'm thinking I am thinking a running back because I feel like there have been some really good wide receiver seasons, but the thing with running backs is that you combine rushing and receiving touchdowns for them. So that's why I'm leaning towards it being a running back.
True.
We had a couple guys that had a lot of touchdowns this season, right? We mentioned on the show a while back, we had Austin Eckler, who had a massive season on the ground. I don't know how much receiving production this guy had, but at least on the ground. I know he's not the answer, but Jamal Williams ate up a lot of touchdowns.
Yep.
So it's got to be a guy who just scored a lot on both sides, and it's just going through the brain, trying to rack around who. Because even if we just kept it to receiving touchdowns, Rick, who would even be the guess of the wide receiver or tight end with the most receiving touchdowns in the season today? That's why I'm thinking running back, because we get to combine both there.
Well, that's fair. I mean, I would almost think if you're talking receivers, potentially Mike Evans could be a possibility.
Devontae Adams, he had a season a couple years ago, 14, 15 TDs or something like that?
Tyreek
Hill.
Because Tyreek also has the kick returns.
That's true. But the thing is, with Tyreek Hill, I don't think with kick return and receiving, yes, but eventually, they slowly tried to take away some of the returning. They tried to make it so other people were returning.
And then Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy found gadget ways to get him more involved.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill on the jet sweep was a nightmare for most mortal teams, including the Denver Broncos.
Well, always the Denver Broncos.
Always. Yeah. I don't know. This is an interesting one. This is a very interesting question, I think. What do you think? What do you think about Zeke?
You know what? He's definitely up there because he led the league in rushing touchdowns at least once.
Yeah.
And just the only question is how many did he have and how much receiving production did he have?
Right. Because the only other name that I'm thinking about is Alvin Kamara.
Two-way player for sure. Do you remember how many receiving touchdowns Austin Eckler had this season? Because rushing, he finished a lot of drives for the Chargers.
I don't, but I know that not this season, but the season before. I think he was close to 10 receiving touchdowns.
Right. God, imagine he had put those two together.
Jeez. Crazy. Or, another name just popped in my head, but he's not a dominant receiving player, but we keep forgetting about him because he didn't play this year. Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, his breakout season where a lot of people were saying he could have been Offensive Player of the Year. Like he's definitely up there. I feel like the names we've listed, I feel like we have like the three of the names that people would put in that combo the most.
Yeah.
I'll shoot my first guess here. I will go with God, it's ironic considering this guy's looking for a new team. But I'll go with Ezekiel Elliott for my first guess.
Ezekiel Elliott. I actually technically have the top 50 of all time, and Zeke is not on the list, and in a single season touchdown record.
50.
He doesn't even make the top 50.
Wait, hold on.
So, like, I have all time, not just active players in front of me. He's not in the top 50.
Okay. Well, all right then.
I do like your Austin Eckler thought, but something's drawing me towards Alvin Kamara.
I don't blame you. Alvin Kamara in his prime with Drew Brees still there, with Sean Payton still there, an absolute beast. Then, when he's not being an utter idiot off the field as well, when he can actually stay on it. So,
I mean, unfortunately, that's how it goes. The most talented people in the world are also idiots. See Sam Bankman-Fried. Alvin Kamara will be my guess, Justin.
Alvin Kamara, do you have a year? Because Alvin Kamara is on this list multiple times.
oh my God. What was the last really good New Orleans Saints season that like everyone was just bawling out?
2020.
Is that the year that Michael Thomas won Offensive Player?
I think so.
Huh.
Is that the year you're going for?
The year makes most sense to me. Yeah, I'll go 2020.
Alvin Kamara in 2020 had 16 rushing touchdowns, 5 receiving. He's the current leader for active players for touchdowns in a season.
See, the clarity of the Darkness Retreat guided me and cleared my mind to knowing that answer. Therefore, I am back.
Just for your information, tied for second at 20 touchdowns in a season were Austin Eckler and Jonathan Taylor, both in 2021.
There we go.
In third place, tied for third with 19 touchdowns in a season, Aaron Jones, Christian McCaffrey.
Wow.
And the next best was 18 touchdowns. They have 5 current active players. Devontae Adams had 18 receiving touchdowns.
Yep.
In 2020.
Beast.
Austin Eckler had 13 and 5 in 2022. James Conner in 2021 had 15 rushing touchdowns and 3 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah, he finished a lot of drives with the Cardinals randomly.
Alvin Kamara again, 2018 with 14 and 4. And guys, you didn't mention the king at all.
Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry, 16 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns in 2019.
I mean, to be fair, the receiving production was the question because when you have to carry such a mediocre quarterback, like your legs can only do so much of the running that like how much pass catching can you really do?
I was also going to say, to be fair, he's on the Titans.
That too.
Yeah.
Which also, God bless his soul, he's still a Titan. So
I know, right?
he's got to deal with that as well. But another rousing round of trivia, absolutely outstanding per usual. Even guys, don't be fooled. Even though like we actually do get these a good chunk of the time, like Justin hits hard with it. Like I would love to see some people they actually tried to play along. Like how many people would have figured that out? I mean, maybe some people because it's more of a modern question, but like I feel like the throwbacks that we've had, I feel like it would stump a couple people here and there. So we've had Justin's had some good ones, so another great round of trivia there once again. But the games, ladies and gentlemen, we're not finished playing them. We play games on this show. So we have some rounds of Would You Rather, which is always the fun one because it really gets the debating started to then lead to the football. So this is the perfect segue of fun to football. It's the perfect in between before we get to all the free agency talk. So Justin, take it away. Let's hit us with some Would You Rather.
All right, guys. Today, if you had to pick right now, who would you rather have as your quarterback? You can only pick from the NFC North.
Ooh. You can only pick from the NFC North.
You have to pick one of those quarterbacks from the NFC North. Who would you rather have as your quarterback?
So
I know Jerry's going to pick Kirk Cousins, but what do you think?
So it's Kirk Cousins,
Jordan Love,
Justin Fields,
and
Jared Goff. Do we include the backups as well? 'Cause there's got to be some Nate Sudfeld votes too.
You could.
I don't know why you would, but you could.
Well, didn't the Vikings just get David Blau as their backup in Minnesota?
No, I thought they had Sudfeld as their backup.
Was it? I thought
Somebody got Sudfeld. Yeah.
Someone also got David Blau, I thought.
Oh no. Nick Mullins.
Let me do my research.
Yeah, Nick Mullins is their backup.
Where's David Blau at?
You guys are really taking the important parts of this question to heart.
Oh no,
We really are.
David Blau's
The
a
Lions have
Cardinal.
Sudfeld.
Poor guy. The Lions
The
have
Lions
Sudfeld.
have Goff and Sudfeld.
Yeah, I was wrong. David Blau is on the Arizona Cardinals. They don't deserve him. He's too good for them.
Danny Etling on the Packers is also a consideration.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
And how do we forget PJ Walker? Come on.
The XFL
There's
MVP.
your answer.
I mean, that's my answer right there.
There you go. XFL MVP, PJ Walker. Okay. So I have it between two for me. It depends upon the style that I want to run my offense around. I think that the strides that he showed last year and the way that they have built up their team this offseason, I think that Jared Goff is the best quarterback in the NFC North currently. I think that given the fact that, yes, they did lose DJ Chark, and yes, they lost Hawkinson, they still have a potent offensive scheme. And I think Jared Goff is still an efficient quarterback, efficient enough to get me to the playoffs. I can't say that about Jordan Love because there's very limited sample size there. I can't say that about Kirk Cousins because fraudulence. And as much as I want to say it about Justin Fields, give me another season that's as good as this year for Justin Fields, dual, as a passing threat and a rushing threat, and I'll consider it. But I think of those four, the most established guys that are there are the ones that have been to a Super Bowl. Jared Goff, even though it was a terrible game, except for you, Justin, so you won money off of that game, Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl. So he's got that playoff experience. So I will take Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions.
Like Rick said, it really all depends on a couple different factors of how do you want to run your team in terms of the offensive scheming and various things like that. And also what your goal is. If my goal is to get the first overall pick next year, sign me up for Jordan Love every single day of the week. If my goal is to lose in the playoffs in the first game, sign me up for Kirk Cousins. So that really only leaves a couple guys here. And I'm saying a couple because PJ Walker is certainly on my radar. And if he was still technically contractually under them, Nathan Peterman might be above Jordan Love, just saying. Anyways, let's actually take this seriously here for a second. Between Jared Goff and Justin Fields, I feel like I've misrepresented myself a little bit when it comes to Jared Goff. I hold nothing against Jared Goff, actually. I don't. He is nowhere near the same level of disdain that I have of the likes of other mid-tier quarterbacks. Now, is Jared Goff at the end of the day relatively mid? Yes. But is he on the higher tier of mid? I'm willing to give you that. Yes, was it ultimately the right choice for the Rams to move on from him? Obviously, they won the freaking Super Bowl last year. But at the same time, there's also some credence into, hey, Jared Goff was really bad his rookie season, like bad. Sean McVay helped fix them. And in Detroit, he's proven that he is the guy that they can rely on until they believe that they can find their franchise QB. Jared Goff is probably going to get this season because I don't think the Lions look at this draft. I don't think they're bought into because they're probably not going to get Stroud or Young, and those would have been the two guys. Do you really trust Levis or Richardson? That's a big question. Unless maybe you do trust Richardson, but he needs me personally. I think he needs at least the first 2 years to sit. I'm not starting Anthony Richardson until year 3 on that contract. And so if you need a guy for the next 2 seasons, Jared Goff, I think, is the guy. And I want to give him that respect before I say Justin Fields, because I have the value of still the rookie QB pay scale for the next couple seasons and the 5th-year option comparably to what the QBs are getting paid on their second contracts is still a pretty good bargain. Ask the Dolphins. They just exercised Tua's 5th-year option officially, or like they made a guarantee or whatever the situation was. I know like they exercised it before, all that. The value of still having that for your team for building is massive, because one thing that I want to say we brought it up when we talked about the Bears-Panthers trade, but I don't know how much we really went into it, is that realistically the Bears could still want to get a new QB in the room next season. And now they have the draft pick ammunition to trade up to the first overall pick. So if we're talking specifically for the Chicago Bears, there's that. But let's just talk about a generic team. Who am I picking between Justin Fields and Jared Goff? I want to be able to have an offense that is very electric, very elusive, where my running backs get the support of their quarterback being able to run. And the biggest thing for me is I'm going to make sure from day one of the damn season, we're running the offense properly. The problem with the Bears at the beginning of last season, why I was very critical of Matt Eberflus and that squad, was because they were not running Justin Fields the way he should be run. They were still trying to make him a pure pocket passer, West Coast quarterback. That's not his style. That's not who he is definitively. Now, does the completion percentage bother me a little bit with Fields? Yes, I think he should still be upping that. But at the same time, if I have some weapons, if I have an offensive line that doesn't rank towards the bottom 3 teams of the league, because the Bears were not good on the offensive line last year. There's a reason why Justin Fields had those many rushing yards. Is he electric? Yes. They have to run for his dang life. Also, yes. So at the end of the day, I think with the right setup, which the Bears are slowly trying to build here, there's still plenty more to do. I think Fields could be good. If you're telling me I have a relatively set team here with some pieces, with some weapons, with an offensive line that's going to help, I think Justin Fields is the guy. I think with young quarterbacks, first-round quarterbacks, I think if they're put in a terrible situation, like they're going to flop. How many quarterbacks could you realistically have put on the expansion Texans and they would have been okay? Like, was David Carr that great of a quarterback at the end of the day? No. But the Texans certainly didn't help him when he was basically being put in a body bag every other possession, every other drive. Like that didn't help in any way, shape, or form. And I feel that Justin Fields just needs that. If you're telling me my setup is in a really good place, give me the young guy that can make the offense that extra electric. But that's not me saying I'm taking him miles ahead of Jared Goff. In no way. Jared Goff has actually really just proven something to me this past season. I want to give him his due. But just give me what the young guy with the contract. Because we're also saying right now, that means we're also taking the contract. And I love the 3 years of cost effectiveness with my franchise quarterback here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was between those two. And I don't think you'd go wrong with either choice there.
Yeah. We can also agree third place is PJ Walker on this list.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely third place. So my concern with Justin Fields is a concern that I think the Giants had with Daniel Jones for the first couple of years of his contract, which was taking care of the football. Because he led the league in fumbles last year too. Which you have that tendency if you are running quarterback. And Justin Fields is a more mobile quarterback than Jared Goff, is no question about it. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I agree, and I understand your mindset about the monetary value of it. But if I'm going for a win now, or if I'm going for a guy that I think can win now and get me to a Super Bowl, more soon, in his first 100 games in the NFL, which is amazing to say that he's survived 100 games in the NFL. Jared Goff has a 54-45-1 record. He's thrown for 26,000 yards, 155 touchdowns, 70 picks. I mean, it's again, even last year, 4,438 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He doesn't make mistakes. He's not electric like Justin Fields can be, but he's not a guy that's going to make mistakes a lot. So I think I like a guy who is error-prone less now than a guy who you have to continue to make less error-prone in the coming years. Because even though the Bears did a lot in the offseason, there's still the question marks of can Justin Fields keep holding on to the football? And we'll see. Year 3 is going to be a big one for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this, the only thing of the stats that you brought up that I would just take away, and I would say this for any quarterback, wins are not a quarterback stat. Like in recent years, like I know you brought up because like the first 100 games, just his other stats I think are more so like pretty good. But just to me, wins aren't like 9-10 games above 500 with that one tie in there, which I mean, Jared Goff with the one tie in there is very enticing. Like they're not a quarterback stat, and I would say this about any other quarterback if we had to pick from other divisions. That one in particular, a guy who's done a lot of winning over the last 5 years or so, is probably going to get a rude awakening when he's on a team that's not as good as the one he just left. If you can't figure out if you can't figure out who I'm talking about, I'm talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. But
yeah, obviously.
Well, I mean, the Ravens are going to be like a top 4, top 5 team if they don't replace Lamar with an actual competent quarterback. So
wild.
And when I say top 4, top 5 team, I mean in the draft.
Oh yeah, no one else.
Just to clarify for the people. No
one else thought differently.
You would be surprised. All right, that was the first round of Would You Rather. Do we have one more, Justin? Or
yes, we do.
All right, let's get to it.
All right. Who is more likely to draft a quarterback in the top 10? The Seahawks or the Lions?
Because it fits so well, because the Lions don't have anybody backing up Goff aside Nate Sudfeld, I think if the Lions do draft Anthony Richardson, it kind of works in their favor. But I'll be honest, I can't see either team doing it this year. I think the Lions are more likely, but I think the needs are elsewhere. And I think next year's quarterback class, if you're not getting Caleb Williams out of USC
or the May kid from UNC,
yeah, or Drake May, who are you getting?
Spencer Rattler, your boy.
Yeah, he's got to show me something, and he did this year.
Bo Nix, there are a couple quarterbacks that could have gone out this year that decided not to, and like it's their last chance to raise their value.
But that's the thing. Aside from Caleb Williams and Drake May, none of those names excite me enough.
Oh, I'm with you. As of now, this is just a 2 quarterback class next season.
Agreed. So, like I said, I think the Lions have other needs. I think the Seahawks have other needs. Quarterback is not the answer here. If it was supposed to be the answer, I think the Lions, I think Geno's got a little more mileage on him. And again, the Lions quarterback room is small with Goff and Sudfeld. You need a third. You can take a rookie, you can make him, and the thing is too, it would be a better precedent that the Lions set than when they took Joey Harrington all those years ago. Because Joey Harrington was not ready for prime time, and they thrust him in right away, and he was awful. If you take Anthony Richardson, who's not ready yet, you give him a couple years seasoning under Goff, and sure, under Sudfeld as well, I think he could be better. So I see the Lions making that move. Do I see it happening? No, but I think they're more likely of the two, which I know is the question.
I think it's ironic because I think these are the 2 teams most likely to take Anthony Richardson overall, honestly. I think because, I mean, we'll talk more about this in the coming weeks as we eventually have our own mock draft here on the show. But as of now, signs are pointing towards C.J. Stroud going number 1 to the Panthers. Right now, Bryce Young is going to go number 2 to the Houston Texans, and his name is also going to go on the witness protection program because he's going to need a lot of counseling for what he's going to have to deal with in Houston this year.
Yeah.
And Will Levis, we assume someone's going to draft him. Just the question at this point is who. Mm-hmm. This is going to be like the second time in 3 years that a white quarterback impresses people at his pro day, and someone's going to trade up for him or just draft him really high. So, Zach Wilson. And so with Richardson, I think these are the 2 teams most likely to do it. Who would I give the edge to? See, both teams need a lot defensively, but I think the thing is that the Lions have a bit of an edge on the defensive side of the ball that compared to the Seahawks. We're going to get into it in a moment, but they did just sign a cornerback / safety in free agency where if he performs well this year and he loves the environment that Dan Campbell's building in Detroit, maybe he signs long-term with them in CJGJ. Mm-hmm. They have Aiden Hutchinson there, the young pass rusher of the future, who had a great first season. Like a lot of people were like, hey, Aiden Hutchinson, decent, low, high base, low ceiling. I think his ceiling might be a bit higher than we were giving him credit for in the pre-draft process. And Jeff Okuda, who had a good year last year, and I think it's going to be a big year this year if he could be Detroit's number one guy, or maybe they get another corner to pair up with him, maybe with that second first-round pick they have, because, again, the 2 first-round picks is valuable. I think I would give the slightest of edges to the Lions because I also think this, and I love my guy. I love my future Ring of Honor quarterback. But let's say Geno Smith gets hurt next season and everything falls apart. The Seahawks, I think, are more likely to be in the position next year of having the upper pick if they deal with the Geno Smith injury and would get their quarterback then. And so you give Geno at least this grace. The Lions, I feel, their roster is closer to being ready for the franchise quarterback. And the whole perception was this is the year. This is the season that they need to draft the quarterback. Coming into it, they had the 2 first-round picks. The Rams pick, as we saw, became so much more valuable, even more valuable than their own, to the point that they have the ammunition to go for the franchise quarterback. And I think if the Bears hadn't had the first overall pick, maybe the Lions would have made that jump, because we know the Lions were not going to give the Bears extra draft ammunition. We just know that for a fact. Even though some teams have kind of traded in division the last couple of years, it's never been for a pick of that caliber.
Right.
And the Bears were never going to give a first overall pick to a team in their division. So I think the Lions are closer to being ready for their quarterback and can still build. I feel basically what I'm saying is that the Lions can afford to use one of their first on a quarterback if they had to, and the roster's fine. I think their roster is just a step ahead of Seattle, because Seattle, yes, Woolen was amazing last year, but they're still making up for years of some not great draft picks where they kind of had to overdraft a couple players in the late first round because they traded their second round pick for somebody on the offensive or defensive side of the ball that they tried to go for a playoff push and that failed. So I think the Lions are a step ahead in that regard compared to the Seahawks. So I feel that if you had to pick one, I think the Lions would be the team more willing to draft Richardson. So I'll say them.
See, I think it's interesting you brought up to the fact that the Lions have 2 first-round picks, because that's...
And I know the Seahawks do too, but I'm just saying between the two, like the Lions comparatively have 2 higher ones, because ultimately Seattle made the playoffs. So that gives like a 1 or 2 pick difference between the two of them. And the Rams were, I mean, I know the Broncos were bad, but the Rams were awful this season. The worst ever season by defending Super Bowl champion.
But so that's why I brought that up, because I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because if there's a case where a quarterback falls, and there's a case where a quarterback can fall in this draft, I mean,
maybe both, for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, both could be. See, I think either all 4 of the top guys are going to be gone by the first 12 picks, or it's going to be 3, and someone's going to fall down to that mid-tier first round, and the Lions are sitting there at 18. That might be their chance to pick up the steal, because you know for a fact that Tampa's picking right behind them, and they're probably going to take a quarterback as well, or they're going to try to take a quarterback. So if the Lions get the guy first, let's say the Lions want Will Levis, and even though Levis had a great pro day, let's say that something happens and he starts falling. If Will Levis is there at 18, you take him immediately.
Yeah, they will.
That's your guy, because the money's better at 18 than at 5, and you can absolutely justify that by saying, look, we took somebody on the defensive side that's going to be a game changer like Aiden Hutchinson was. Or maybe they reach and say, well, we lost DJ Chark, but here's Quentin Johnston. Take him, and here's your new quarterback.
I would also like to say here really fast, because I know we're talking strictly top 10. Something I think Seattle could do that I don't think we're talking enough about. They could go other positions in the first round, and with their second round pick, they could go Hendon Hooker. He's still there. And you give him this entire season to rehabilitate from his injury. You give him an entire season to learn from a quarterback that understands what it's like to have a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Like the Seahawks could, I know we're talking about top 10. The Seahawks could very well say, we'll just get our guy in the second round here. Because, look, if Hendon Hooker had finished the season healthy, he probably would have been a first round pick. And I don't think we'd be talking about Anthony Richardson as much. But because we have to play the game the way it's played out, I think Hendon Hooker in the second round would be a steal. And if he's there early in the round, because the Bears aren't going to take him early in that round because they have their quarterback, I very much could see the Seahawks doing like a mini trade up here of a couple picks and saying, all right, this is the guy that we can build around in the future he could learn under Gino for a couple years. And the thing is, I don't think you would make Gino mad because this is not a guy that's going to take your job, dude.
No.
He's hurt. He's rehabilitating. Whose messages are going off? He is rehabilitating. Like this is not a case where he'd have to worry. So you would get your young quarterback and you're not upsetting the current guy. It's harmonious. I don't think there's a lot of situations that tend to end up that way, relatively speaking.
And I even think you can make a case where the Seahawks could even draft up into the late first round if they really want Hooker that badly.
Yeah,
and
like the Ravens did with Lamar a couple years ago.
Exactly.
Because basically you would get the 4 years plus that 5th-year option.
Right.
And yes, the 5th-year option is expensive, but if the guy hasn't played as much in his first couple of years, it's just a touch less. Like if Jordan Love had played before the season, his 5th-year option would be, I think, way more. But because he didn't play as much, it's 20? I think we talked about this on the show previously.
20.1 or something like that.
20.1, which I mean is not ideal, but compared to, I don't know if he had played more, 25, 30.
Yeah.
That's a $5 to $10 million difference.
Yeah.
That's an extra player on one of your offensive or defensive lines.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
I would go with that. But yeah, that was very good. You brought it again this week, Justin. I'm assuming that's the end of Would You Rather.
That's the last one I had.
There we go. So that is the end of Would You Rather. Once again, our games master, our keeper of games and keeper of keys here on the podcast is absolutely outstanding. Good stuff, Justin. So now we move on. We had plenty of fun. We talked a lot of football there. So let's continue the show and how it's going here. Let's continue to talk about football here. Let's talk about what's on the title of the show. Clean up on aisle F, free agency, ladies and gentlemen. A few more guys have been signed since last week. A lot of the bigger names were already discussed last week, so we don't really need to deliberate too much. Like we did a lot of discussion last week, but a few more guys got signed, and quite a few guys, like I mentioned at the top of the show, are still out there. We have different categories to do that. But before we get to that, let's talk about the names who have already been signed. Let's talk about our guys who have contracts for themselves here. The big one being, I know I already kind of mentioned him briefly. I mean, we talked about the Lions. It's going to be 3 straight question/segments here with the Lions, but here we go. The Lions, I think, at least for me, shocked people with acquiring Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on a 1-year deal. I think $8 million is the total worth of the 1 year. I think it's 6.5 for sure, and then he's got like another $1.5 million in incentives, I want to say, from what I was reading earlier. Based on interceptions are some of the incentives, which I find kind of funny, actually. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, late addition to the Eagles before last season, but a linchpin of that defensive backfield, tied for the league interceptions. Missed a couple games last year due to injury. The only reason I bring that up is because I think he would have been a first-team All-Pro had he not missed a few of those games, because I think he would have gotten at least 1 or 2 extra interceptions, and he would have been the outright league leader. And I think the Eagles. We talked about this last week, Justin. Once they brought back Darius Big Play Slay, they knew it was gone. Like they knew they were going to lose CJGJ, and they were willing to make the sacrifice. The Bengals, I read, were in the mix, and especially when they lost Jesse Bates, I think ipso facto, if the logic would have been, okay, you just lost your safety, your best safety there. Now you bring in a guy like that. They don't get him. I heard the Broncos were trying to make a late push. I'm not surprised that they weren't able to do it. It's the Broncos. But the Lions end up getting him on a 1-year deal. So, Rick, because you missed last week's episode, I want to throw it to you first.
Sure.
Your reactions to CJGJ having to accept the 1-year deal? Were you shocked? Like I gotta say, I was shocked. I thought he would have gotten that big multi-year deal. Maybe it just wasn't in the cards next year. Maybe something happened with his agent. Maybe they overplayed their hand or something. Things in the market didn't play out the way that they were hoping it would, and they just decided on the 1-year deal. And then after that, what do you make of this for the Lions? Which, I mean, we know is great for them, but detail why this was big for this team that's a playoff hopeful this season.
So I think a lot of this has to do with the way that a lot of other dominoes fell in free agency this year. I think teams are a little scared now of potentially giving bigger money to non-quarterbacks because quarterbacks are commanding the most dough, be that as it may. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think, deserved a multi-year deal, but given the marketplace that it was, you have to ask yourself, was this just the product of being in a great system, or is he that good of a player? I think he's a good player. And I think the thing is, I think the way the contract shakes out for him, for the Lions, only works in his benefit because it's really, as you said, 6.5 with $1.5 million of incentives. And those incentives are about playing time and interceptions. So basically, if the Lions don't suck this year on defense, like they did last year, on defense, if they get better because of him, he'll earn his $1.5 million. And that's fair, I think. It helps Detroit out a lot because, again, they had a rough time on defense last year. They were a run and gun offense, and then they were collapse and fold, and here you go. Here's the end zone. Take it and leave it. Defense. So I think it's a gamble on both sides. I think it's a gamble on CJGJ, but again, he's betting on himself this year. He's saying, yeah, you know what? I will take your $8 million because I know I can get 80% of playing time and I can get 5 interceptions this year. I can do both of those things for your defense. I'm that good of a player. And then once I prove that I'm that good of a player for you this year, we will talk long term. And I think if he does that, you're talking 3-4 year deal, a lot of money going his way. But I kind of like this. I like the fact that it's a proven contract in a way. The guy earned it from last year, the $6.5 million. That extra $1.5 million, go earn it again, and then get your big payday.
And if he does, I think it's going to be even more than 3. I think it's going to be a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
Like I think if he has another Pro Bowl, All Pro caliber season, he might end up being the highest paid corner, safety, whatever he ends up being positionally in the league, or one of like the top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like he's going to get paid very handsomely if he has another breakout season, which I mean I think he will. I'm with you. He's a good player. He was a good player in New Orleans. I think they traded him in part because they probably thought they were going to lose him after this season, and they got a draft pick back for him from the Eagles. That is what they were able to do. I think it was a great deal then, and now I think it's a pretty good deal. Again, I always want guys to get paid, so that's why a part of me was shocked, but part of me was also like, well, there are teams with needs that I felt CJGJ could have gotten. And he just goes, like you said, for the 1-year prove-it deal, and he could really cash out next season. Justin, your thoughts about CJGJ? If you have any contract thoughts, like what we've already kind of broken down, you can add to it if you want. Or more so, like, what does he do? This Lions defense, I think if there's one thing the Lions needed last year on the defensive side of the ball, Justin, aside from more talent, is a leader. Like, Aiden Hutchinson is a good player. They have a couple decent players on that team. But a guy who has the energy, has the leadership skills, he has the swagger, I think CJGJ is what they were missing, because this is now a guy who's played on a team that's made it to the Super Bowl. This is a guy he saw on the other side of the ball Drew Brees be a leader. He's played under Sean Payton. He's played under Nick Sirianni. He's played under some really good coaches here with some really good teams, and now he's going to bring that kind of mindset to Detroit. I think this might be the best signing, arguably, in free agency for the Lions here, because if this goes the total way they want it to go, holy hell, this is going to be a game changer for the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the Lions were one of the worst teams against the pass last year. I mean, they gave up over 4,000 yards on the season. You know, it's an issue that they've had. It's an issue that kept them from winning a lot of these close games. They were not able to stop certain people from throwing over the top and kind of doing what they wanted offensively. And it's a shame because you had a lot of young talent along the defensive line. You had a lot of young talent on offense, and they weren't able to capitalize further. I think that's why a lot of people thought that they were going to be really good this year. This past year. And I mean, they definitely took a step forward, and I think they can continue to take step forwards if they continue to do things the way they're doing them. But this was a major issue. And signing a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's going to bring a little bit of attitude and a little bit of fierceness to your defense, and he's going to help you in a problem area like that, can only benefit. I mean, he's still a young guy. What is he, like 26, 27? He's a young guy. It was surprising when the Saints traded him last year. So, yeah, I think that it's a great signing for them, and hopefully it works out. And I'm excited to see what that Lions team could be next year with a little extra help in the secondary.
And I think, too, just to put this out there, he is 25, and this is his third team already. So maybe that's caused some consternation in the contract, that maybe because this is his third team and he's still so young, that maybe there's a big question on that end. Is he going to be able to stay? Is he durable enough? So maybe, like I said, this feels like a prove it, and then, yeah, he'll get a long-term deal, because if he's the player that he thinks he is and that we've seen, he'll absolutely deserve that long-term deal.
I will say, just for the team thing, I think it's more so just cap situations on his previous two teams. Like I said, the Saints, I feel like this is one of the times where the Saints actually thought ahead, and I give them a little bit of credit. Like, they knew they were going to lose him. They probably thought he was going to have a pretty good season. They probably thought they were going to lose him in free agency. That has been a team that has been cap strapped for several years now. I don't think they're still fully out the woods yet in New Orleans. I think next year might be the first time in a few years where the Saints can finally be like, whew, let's actually try to do something in free agency, because it's been bad for several years now on that team, whether it's, just losing guys or having to restructure, left, right, up and down that entire roster. The Saints have struggled for years at the end of the Drew Brees from the end of the Drew Brees tenure to now. So if having Andy Dalton, Taysom Hill, and Jameis Winston as your quarterbacks last season wasn't enough of an indication. But I think that now this season, that they thought CJGJ was going to be gone. They're like, hey, he's going to have a good season. Someone's going to pay him at least like 8, 9, 10 mil a year, probably for several years. And the Saints were like, we just can't afford that. And they were going to just take the chances. The Eagles lucked out. They got a guy at max value. And he did miss a few games. It wasn't that many. Like, I want to say he still played 13, 14 games, relatively speaking, or 12, which is still pretty good for a 17-game season, relatively, with the production he had. So, I mean, maybe that is, but if so, like, it just continues to show that, like, some of these owners, some of these GMs, they're really stuck in the old ways, because, like, that kind of stuff with this player, like, you got to add context. Like, this is one of those things where if you really took yourself out of the conversation because of those factors, that's just bad GMing on your part. If that is a team that ultimately decided to make that decision, who knows? Obviously, we won't know until, if it's ever told, like, hey, what happened with, again, Bengals or Broncos were both listed. Why did neither of them end up meeting the demands potentially, or did one of them back out? Maybe, especially a team like the Bengals, who needed a guy like a CJGJ in the secondary, but. There goes that. That was the biggest name that signed over the last week. There are some names here that I'm going to mention that if the boys have any specific comments about, we can have a discourse about these names. But these are more so just solid players who signed with teams that have done something in this league before. So that's why we're mentioning them here. The biggest news: Lamar Jackson was waived, ladies and gentlemen. The quarterback on the Denver Broncos got waived. I hope for a very brief second that some people were like, "What?" Probably not. He was waived. In all seriousness, let's get to the real news. The Baltimore Ravens signed a franchise wide receiver, apparently, in Nelson Aguilar. Good luck. That's an extra foot out the door for Lamar Jackson. If anything, he's a running quarterback. He's running to the Baltimore airport as we speak. Yeah. Not good. The Houston Texans have continued to be busy little bees in this free agency. They signed Dalton Schultz. They signed Devin Singletary. And they signed Corey Littleton. 3, pretty solid free agents right there. I believe all on 1-year deals. So they get their chances. I remember last season, early on, we were talking about this, is that the Texans are just a team. And we said this in the free agency, in the division preview going into the season as well. The Texans are a team that are going to have quite a few veterans there that are trying to play their way to stay in the NFL, that are trying to perform to continue to be employed in this league, relatively speaking. That's kind of the case with Corey Littleton and the potential renaissance for Singletary. And Dalton Schultz probably just wanted to stay in Texas, so he's like, all right, I'll go to Houston.
Yeah, I like all three of them because they do add depth to areas where the Texans needed depth. I mean, now you pair Singletary with Dameon Pierce, who had a really good rookie season as their bell cow back. You give Dalton Schultz a tight end spot, and he's going to be their TE1 because they don't have a tight end in that room. I don't care, Tegan Quartarano or whatever your name is. I don't care. You're not a tight end 1. And then the Corey Littleton sign is good because it can spell the Christians, Harris and Kirksey, for a little bit. So I think while they're not splashy signings, you have to kind of know, if you're the Texans, that you're not going to get the bigger names. You just got to get depth, and you just got to get guys that can play, because it can't be much worse than it was last year.
Yeah.
You'd think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you'd think. And also,
then you wake up and Nick Casario is your general manager, and you're like, oh, well, we're still here.
Yeah, you gotta live with your failures sometimes, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, those signings by them. The Cowboys also got a little bit busy after the meme of them not signing anybody. They're actually signing some people now, unfortunately. They re-signed Dante Fowler Jr., who had 6 sacks for the team last season, and they also signed, because they released their backup center / I guess occasional running back in Ezekiel Elliott. They also signed Ronald Jones into the backfield for Tony Pollard, who officially did sign his 1-year franchise tag. We'll see. Again, hope Pollard is 100% ready for the start of the season. I want to say he will be, unless reports have said otherwise, but I think he will be. So you'll have a running back tandem of Pollard and Jones going into the season. I think ample opportunity for someone to break out and be the next, maybe the RB2 there over Jones. Who knows? I think with Rojo, I think he kind of was put in the Bruce Arians doghouse one time too many. I felt he was fine for them. And they just kept going with Leonard Fournette, which I guess was the whims and wishes of Tom Brady. So I think that's probably part of the reason why things ultimately fell out for Ronald Jones. But hey, he's been to back-to-back Super Bowls. He was on the Chiefs last year, technically. So, or not back-to-back. Was it back-to-back? No. Was there a break in between the Bucs and the Rams, obviously. So 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years for Ronald Jones. Good man on that. Damian Harris leaves the New England Patriots to the Buffalo Bills. So as the question of Ezekiel Elliott and his future was coming about, and I think Justin mentioned the Bills as a team last week, the Bills said, nah, we're good. We want a running back, not a backup center. So they get Damian Harris there. And the Jets also made a signing. They got Mecole Hardman. They take him away from the Kansas City Chiefs on a 1-year, please, Aaron Rodgers, come to our team deal. That's basically what that one is. But I also think, scheme fit wise, it does kind of make sense because I think he is a bit different from Alan Lazard and Garrett Wilson. So from a potential scheming perspective, there could be some sense in that. Some AFC East teams making moves here, obviously the Cowboys as well. Any thoughts on any of those small signings, boys, before we keep it going?
Well, the Hardman signing kind of, tied into a larger deal the Jets made too, right? So, I mean, I don't know if that was part of our discussionary tactics or whatnot, but it's essentially a guy that's replacing the guy they traded away to Cleveland in a way. So it changes things. Yeah.
That was going to be the transition, but continue.
It changes things around a little bit for them. And you know what? The Damian Harris signing is good for Buffalo because let's be real here. Buffalo's running game last year was meh at best. And Damian Harris, if he can regain his form that he had for the Patriots a couple of years ago, now you've got him. You got Nyheim Hines, kick return extraordinaire, and you have the young guy in James Cook. That's a pretty good running back by committee room up there in Buffalo now, especially with the loss of Singletary. I think they improved themselves dramatically in that end.
Yeah. Any extra thoughts, Justin? Or
I agree with Rick. I really like the signing in Buffalo. I thought that they would probably go after a guy like Zeke. They were supposedly the favorite at one point. But bringing Damian Harris in actually leaves you some room to give James Cook more responsibility. They tried to do it at the beginning of the season last year, and he kind of fumbled a little bit. And now he really came on at the end of the season. He might end up being the guy there this year. So it'll be interesting to see how their run game changes.
Absolutely. And speaking of some of the last names we talked about here with Hardman and Zeke, let's transition into the next portion of this where trade happened. Elijah Moore was traded along with a 3rd-round pick from the New York Jets to the Cleveland Browns for a 2nd-round pick. And Zeke has also released his final 3 teams he apparently wants to go to. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's stick with the Jets here because Rick kind of mentioned it. It goes hand in hand with the whole Mecole Hardman ding because Mecole Hardman and Elijah Moore, they're sort of the Spider-Man meme for the most part. Very similar players in terms of being able to vertically stretch the field. Hardman obviously being in the league a couple more years, slight more polished, but Elijah Moore with all the talent potential in the world. Justin, I'll throw it to you first because you were actually the one that reported the deal to us. Justin's our little news breaker for us in the chat a good chunk of the time. So your thoughts on that deal as the current Jets fan, the only current Jets fan on the show here. As of now, potentially you might get another one to join/rejoin you at the end of the affairs here. But before that, let's talk about this. Elijah Moore to the Browns. What'd you make of it?
I wasn't really thrilled, to be completely honest. I mean, I liked Elijah Moore. I think he was underrated. He had a tough time. I'm just making excuses as a Jets fan, but I thought that he had a lot more to contribute than what you saw in the past couple seasons, and I think a lot of it had to do with the quarterback play. But that being said, I get it. I understand why they did it. I would have maybe liked to have gotten a little bit more, but they did get to move up and get a pretty decent draft pick out of it, even if they had to give up a 3rd to get that one back. So yeah, it makes sense. I assume maybe one of those picks will end up getting moved now, one of those 2nd-round picks. I'm not sure why the Jets would trade a 2nd-round pick. I mean, I can't imagine anyone they would be interested in. But yeah, it's it is what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. And then the Mecole Hardman subsequent signing, did you have any thoughts about that?
I like Hardman. Yeah, look, it makes sense for what they were trying to do. They still needed someone to play that role in that position, and Hardman does that for them. Hardman will come in. He'll be a guy that's a little bit more experienced. He might be faster than Elijah Moore. I think he's a little bit bigger. He's got a bigger body, and he'll stretch the field for them. He'll run down, and it's going to make guys like Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard have more room over the middle. So
Fair shout.
Yeah, I think Hardman too is also a good replacement for Braxton Berrios as well.
Well, that's another thing that I never really understood, because when they cut Berrios, or I mean, even halfway through the season last season, they were running a ton of plays for Braxton Berrios in the end zone, in the red zone, in the middle of the field. And to me, he's the same player as Elijah Moore. But Elijah Moore was faster and had better hands. So it didn't really make a ton of sense to me that they had those two players at competing positions and they gave all of the carries and, attention to Braxton Berrios. It might have been a way for them to coddle Zach Wilson because they're very good friends, but it wasn't logical to me. As I said, I had a lot of issue with the play calling and the offensive scheming. Again, that might not have been LaFleur's fault. That might have been, here's what you have, and you have to call the best plays for the players available. But there are points where you have to say, all right, it doesn't matter what I think you can and can't do. This is what needs to be done to win the game.
Well, if you thought that Mike LaFleur was bad, just wait until Nathaniel Hackett, starts running time off the clock for no reason. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Look, it's Nathaniel Hackett has had a lot of success as an offensive coordinator. We'll see what he does. I mean,
with a specific quarterback at the helm, Justin. Let's be honest.
The idea is that quarterback is going to be at the helm.
Will he?
And that's what everyone's saying.
We'll see. I mean,
all the leverage.
I mean, maybe for all we know, maybe he's just waiting for one more piece to go to that team, a la Ezekiel Elliott transition, ladies and gentlemen. Zeke Elliott released his final 3 teams here that he wants to sign with. Do any of them want to sign him is the question, but let's at least give him credit. He has his last 3. He's trying to make it as simple as possible. The New York Jets, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Philadelphia Eagles are the 3 teams that Zeke Elliott most wants to go to. Apparently, he never paid attention to what happened to DeMarco Murray after he left the Cowboys, but, irregardless. Zeke Elliott wants to go to one of those 3 teams. Do any of them want him? I'll throw that to Rick first. Rick, would any of them want him? And if so, who would be the best fit for Zeke and his current skill set the way it is?
So I think yes. I think he still offers something to a team.
Not pass blocking.
No, definitely not that. Definitely not that. He can snap ball really well. So there's that. He can do that. Long snapper in the future, maybe. So initially, I thought the Bengals would be a good fit because their running back room's kind of suspect right now. They did lose Samaje Perine, and Joe Mixon needs someone to spell him. So Ezekiel Elliott could be a good replacement. The more I thought about it, though, the more it kind of makes sense for the Jets to have him on their roster because of how young their running back room is. They don't have a veteran. Michael Carter's there. Breece Hall's coming off his injury. And Bam Knight was really good last year as an undrafted guy. But even Michael Carter's young. They don't have a veteran guy in that room. So maybe getting Zeke on a 1-year deal or even like a team-friendly 2-year deal maybe could be a possibility of an option if it's a case where they get some sort of leadership in that running back room. Now, is Ezekiel Elliott the running back leader that you want in the running back room? History says what history says. We know about Zeke's past. But it's something that could be interesting. It could be an interesting little maneuver for them if they wanted to. I think Philadelphia, that's not the answer for Miles Sanders leaving. It's not. So I think AFC is your best bet. And I think if I'm the Jets, I would see maybe about a 2-year, but a low money 2-year deal. The Bengals, I think they would use him as an RB2, but I think there's a lot of chance in that Jets running back room that he could be part of that committee. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to think that at first, but here we are.
I mean, as a neutral observer at the moment, until potentially further in the show. So, yeah. Justin, what do you think? Zeke Elliott, Jets, book it.
Look, I didn't really love this when I first heard either. My only initial thoughts were he's going to take away playing time from our young running backs. But the fact is, you don't know what Breece Hall is going to be when he gets back. He played 5 games last year and then tore his ACL. You don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. And the Jets were among the worst teams in the league last year in goal line efficiency. I think they scored 6 touchdowns total from inside the 3, and Zeke averaged 1 yard and a touch, and I think he had on his carries, and he had 8 touchdowns. So Zeke by himself had better red zone efficiency than the entirety of the New York Jets. So do I think it could help them? Absolutely. He's a guy that will absolutely be there in those situational plays, and he can clean up, anything that they need him to clean up. Do I love it? It could be worse. I still think he's got some left in the tank. It's not where I would have initially tried to poke around, but if something falls into your lap, doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
I do love that the Jets are playing, NFL Madden 2010, 2011 with, Zeke and that quarterback they're talking about signing. And are they talking about also, there was a wide receiver they're talking about for a bit too, I think, potentially.
Donald Driver is who you're thinking for, probably.
Donald Driver, yeah. Okay, Mark Chmura. Let's go back. Let's go back to the '90s Packers offense.
Although to be fair, Rick, Zeke Elliott wasn't in like the Madden 11 games. He much later. You're thinking of so probably
you could still create him in 2011 and make him, as good as he was in college for the years that he was there.
I mean, he wasn't even at Ohio State yet in 2011. He was still in high school.
That's true.
So, yeah. I mean, to be fair, Rick, you don't need to be accurate when it comes to Madden because EA Sports is barely accurate with making their own games sometimes.
Hey!
Moving on now. So the cleanup is finished. A lot of free agents have signed. We've talked about this, but before we move on to the main event, because oh boy, do we have a main event, guys? We still have one more thing to talk about here. So who's left? Part 2. There's still a lot of names left on the market here that we kind of didn't realize even last week. Like we talked about a few players. I mean, we just talked about the main one, Zeke, so we don't have to talk about him anymore. But a lot of guys remaining in terms of what the breakdown I gave earlier. So we're going to run through a list here really quick of some notable names who are still on the free agency market. Boys, we could tackle this however we want. If we want to name maybe a specific team you guys think this person could go to or just what they could contribute, we could also do that as well. But let's run with this name. Let's go with the biggest names, most cachet. They've made all pros. They've made Pro Bowls. They've been a very notable player over the course of their career so far that are still in free agency. Let's say, I mean, the top 2 easily, we kind of spoke about last week, but just last mentions here of them. Bobby Wagner and Odell Beckham Jr. are both still very much on the free agency market. Well over a year now removed from the Odell Beckham Jr. injury in the Super Bowl, so he should, in theory, be healthy for the start of a team season, which I think would be more captivating than only getting him for the last couple of games of last year and then him not being ready for the playoffs or not looking great going into it. And Bobby Wagner still had a pretty good season for the Rams. It wasn't the same All-Pro standard, but still did his job. I don't think he's the reason that Rams defense was bad last season in any stretch of the imagination. So those 2 guys are still out there. Rick, I'll throw it to you first. Those 2 guys, any thoughts on them? Do you have a team maybe that could best fit? What are we thinking?
Bobby Wagner to the Texans. I think is a good fit because again, you have to know what he is. And yes, he's a second-team All-Pro, but you talked about the Texans trying to sign these little pieces here or there. Having Bobby Wagner on that team, coached by DeMeco Ryans, could fast-track Bobby Wagner into a coaching role as well. He's an older guy, but he was a second-team All-Pro last year. Still a really good linebacker. The Texans aren't done. They need pieces. And I think Bobby Wagner fits in that system really nicely. So if I'm the Texans, I try and get him.
The knowledge he could pass onto that defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Would be great. The Beckham question's a little more muddled because we've been talking about Beckham where he's going to go for weeks now. I think last time I remember talking about him, I was in Tampa with you guys doing this show. That's how long ago it was.
It's so true.
Yeah, Jesus, it's very so like what was it, like week 20 or whatever it was? We're talking like 30 weeks. I don't know. So he's had 2 ACL surgeries. He's had a lot of time to recuperate. You have to know what he is, and I don't think anybody knows what he is yet. He's done his pro day and he's looked okay, but where can he contribute? Why not? You want to try and bring Lamar back? Baltimore.
Really? Ooh.
Why not? Why not? Want to try and bring Lamar back and make something happen there? Nelson Aguilar clearly ain't the answer. Maybe send Beckham there. Beckham and Bateman and Duvernay. Mark Andrews. Maybe. He could be a guy that could, and he's not the Odell that he was when he was younger. He's an older, wiser guy. Put him on that roster and see what happens. It's all about balance with Lamar. You brought me Nelson Aguilar. I'm leaving. You want to talk about OBJ? Maybe I'll stick around for a little bit.
Maybe. Well, also a team that ironically is in purple uniforms that could use a guy because they cut their now former number 2 receiver. The Minnesota Vikings need a second guy behind Justin Jefferson. I know KJ Osborne is young, but if you don't think he might be ready for that number 2 spot yet, maybe Odell.
So I don't think that's, again, I'm still very reticent about putting Beckham in that high profile of a role right now. I think kind of stashing him as like a 3 or a 4 is his max at the moment until you know he can play a full season. I think that'd be too high of a leverage for the Vikings to go for.
True, but is Justin Jefferson so good that maybe because he's going to get doubled, it will open up OBJ?
But they do have Hawkinson as well.
There we go. Maybe he's the 3 basically then. And Dalvin Cook is the running game.
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe you're hiding OBJ a little bit more than what we think, but they haven't been mentioned because I don't think Odell wants to play Minnesota. So we can move on there. Justin, any thoughts on those two, or do you want to have us keep moving on here?
I would say maybe I was thinking about Bobby Wagner a lot, and 2 teams came to mind, both that had playoff hopes last year that could use some help on their defense. And one of them was the Miami Dolphins. I thought they could really use some help. They do have some strong linebackers there, but a veteran presence might really assist in that defensive locker room. And they did just add his buddy in Jalen Ramsey's former teammate. And the other team I was thinking is in New York. The Giants were abysmal at linebacker last year. They could really use some veteran leadership and some help there. This is a guy that, he can get a lot of tackles, maybe have some sort of, late career resurgence in New York. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I think it was last week or the episode before we left on our little break. I definitely mentioned the Giants for Wagner as well. One more team just to throw it in the hat for Bobby Wagner. I haven't heard them rumored for it, but their former first-round pick, young linebacker, left, and they cut a guy who they traded for last year. Could the Pittsburgh Steelers make a shock signing and get Bobby Wagner? Who knows? Add that to a Mike Tomlin defense. A guy like that, with the command of the defense that Bobby Wagner would have. I think the Steelers could be one step closer. You get T.J. Watt and the front 4 and Bobby Wagner and as support behind him. It's pretty good. There's a lot of IQ in that defense if you add Bobby Wagner to the Steelers. I'm just saying. Yeah. And for Odell, I think he's probably just going to end up being a Jet if they get Aaron Rodgers. So I'll just say Odell to the Jets. And
oh boy!
Again, Garrett Wilson. You got Garrett Wilson, Mecole Hardman there, Alan Lazard, OBJ. A lot of weapons to throw to. He may
again, I'm sorry, I said 2011. This is 2016.
Basically.
You told me 3-on-3 NFL. You could have Rodgers, Beckham, and Elliott on your team.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
You might win.
Bad.
You might win that.
That's 7 years ago.
You might win that. But yeah, 7-8 years ago. All right, next couple names here. Last 3 names on the list I have in terms of the biggest possible names. So let's go this. Marcus Peters. I didn't realize he was a free agent. Is out there and known for his interceptions, known for being a very, hard on his sleeve kind of guy, but has done very well in his career for teams picking passes off. Yannick Ngakoue, who I find it really funny that he's a free agent. He had a pretty solid year for the Raiders. He's bounced around on a couple teams here in his career. He's been a Jaguar. He was then, I think, a Minnesota Viking. I think he was on the Ravens. He was on the Colts.
I was saying he was on the Colts last year, right?
Yeah.
He got traded to the Raiders. Oh no, he was on the Raiders.
Yeah, he was on the Raiders.
My bad. So now, good season for the Colts. He was a Raider before that, to be fair. So yeah, he's been around a lot of teams, but he's performed relatively well in different stops. So where could he end up landing? And a guy who he said he was going to consider retirement when he was cut. I don't think he's officially retired yet. Taylor Lewan, is he retired yet or no? I think he's still technically free agent. So those 3 guys, Justin, I'll throw it to you. Any thoughts on those 3 in terms of a landing spot or what they could still contribute?
Yannick Ngakoue is a guy that's still relatively young. Let me just look up how old he is. I think he could fit on a lot of different teams, actually. There's still a premium for pass rushers in this league, and there's a lot of teams that could use someone to get after the quarterback.
He's 27.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's
the problem with Ngakoue before you continue, Justin. Ngakoue is not a good run stopper. He's an excellent guy to get to the quarterback, but his run scheming has been suspect at best. And when you're only good at half the game, it's tougher for you to get every down and to get the money that you think you should get because you're not as good at the running game as you were in the passing game.
Well, of course, but then at the same time, you got to put him on a team that is already good at stopping the run.
Yeah,
and now all of a sudden he can feast because he'll come in at situational downs. So
he's also really good at that one thing he's done. He last season for the Colts 9.5 sacks. The season before that for the Raiders 10 sacks. The season before that 2020 he was split between Minnesota and Baltimore. 5 sacks in 5 starts for the Vikings, and then 3 sacks in only 3 starts for the Ravens. And before that in Jacksonville on 2017 12 sacks. This guy gets after the quarterback. Yeah. To me, there's always. I'm with Justin. I think he may not be the best run stopper, but there's always a spot out there for someone in this league who could get to the quarterback.
Exactly. So you put him on a team that was kind of middle of the pack last year in rush defense and rush yards, and I don't have anyone specifically in mind, but if you add him to like the Ravens or maybe even the Steelers defense, who was very good against the run, but had trouble actually sacking the quarterback.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really good fit for him.
Yeah, we saw what the Steelers defense looked like with no TJ Watt in the lineup. It was not great.
Not good.
Yeah,
not good.
That could be good. Any thoughts on either Peters or Lewan, Justin? Or
I think Lewan will probably end up retiring. When he's on the field, he's had some bright moments still, but he's struggling. I think he stay healthy. Teams are not going to invest in a guy that have the issues that he's having, which is just staying completely healthy and making sure that the quarterback is protected, because you're not going to pay a guy to not protect your quarterback. So
that's fair.
Marcus Peters, it'd be interesting to see him on a contender again. Listen, there's a team in the NFC East that just lost their quarterback / safety. Maybe they try and make it up with a veteran who's also made a name intercepting the football.
There you go. Maybe. He's clearly talking about the Washington Commanders. Anyways, Rick, your thoughts on the three gentlemen we've spoken about?
Taylor Lewan, to me, I think Justin's right. I think this is the end of the road for him. If anything, maybe he tries to take like a minimum pro deal to get with the Chiefs, possibly. Because, I mean, you have to know what he is, and I think the Chiefs can use more depth on the offensive line, and Taylor Lewan is a monster. So I think he'd be a good depth piece for them. In terms of Yannick Ngakoue, Chicago's very young on the defensive end. Dominique Robinson's a 5th-round pick from last year who I loved going into the season. But there's still time for seasoning. You put Yannick Ngakoue on the defensive end for the Bears, I think that'd be pretty good. Or even maybe he goes and pairs Myles Garrett with the Browns. That could be an interesting little selection. And then if I'm Marcus Peters, there's one team that I think desperately would want him and one team that desperately needs him. The Giants desperately want him because Cordell Flott is not going to be your guy. And they also lost Julian Love to the Seahawks. So bringing in Marcus Peters could be really good for them. The team that desperately needs him, that he might not go to, but I think needs him based upon their depth chart, Arizona. Christian Matthew and Marco Wilson are not your answers at the corner spot. And if you put Marcus Peters there as the CB1, he's 30, but he's still got a lot of leg in him. He could be a tough out on that NFC West side. So I think he could be a really good option there for the Cardinals if they wanted to get a little more. I think they could be a team that they have the 3rd pick in the draft. They could go high and reach for the top corner, which is the kid from Oregon, Christian Gonzalez. Mm. So if you take Gonzalez in the draft,
really high.
Yeah, it is high. But Sauce went 4 last year, and we saw how that worked out.
Well, Singletary too. He went 3, didn't he?
Yeah. if you take Gonzalez that high, but you also have Marcus Peters to kind of give him tutelage, and then Peters can work with Christian Matthew, who was a starter as a 7th-round pick. Let's not forget. And then Marco Wilson, whose best contribution was doing the chocolate toss and throwing the shoe 20 yards down the field. I think that's a good fit for Arizona to get Marcus Peters. I do.
Fair shout. Ngakoue, I really like what you mentioned with the Bears, Rick. I think there's still a lot they need to improve on with that defense, and I think Yannick Ngakoue would there. Or even, I know they ended up trading him, but I feel like Minnesota, like that defense underperformed a lot last season. Like if they think they need some more pass rush depth, I mean, why not a reunion there? He did fine with them when he played there.
The key with that, I think, too, is that he did not enjoy his time in Minnesota.
Yep, very fair.
You got to mend fences there if you want to bring him back.
Very fair. Very fair. So I think there, but I think the Bears would be a amazing fit, personally. By
the way, you do know that Ngakoue is Swahili for not a fraud, right?
I can't put him on the Vikings then. Never mind. Wait, is it actually?
No, but I mean, it's close enough.
I was about to say.
What do you mean, is it actually?
Anyways, Taylor Lewan, I'm kind of with you guys. I feel like I could see him retiring. If I did have to put him on a team, again, I feel like I'm going to put a couple guys on this team because, I mean, they need talent, but especially to help out Najee Harris. Pittsburgh Steelers, Taylor Lewan feels like a Steeler. If he hadn't gone to the Titans for his career, I feel like he could have been a Steeler this entire time. I feel like Taylor Lewan is a fit on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they need more offensive linemen. Like you cannot say
though.
Character? You think
Big
he's a
question.
bad character guy?
Yeah, because he had that 4-game suspension for I think it was PED or something like that.
But I think even
The
aside from
Steelers
that,
are-
I think aside from that, he's
Okay,
doing fine.
but let me explain this to you. If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and you're talking about you had Alejandro Villanueva, who was a reserve Army Corps veteran, and then you're going to go to Taylor Lewan, who is a known mean streak and is not a high character guy. I don't know if you can sell it to the Pittsburgh Steelers faithful. I don't know if you can.
Look, all due respect to your quote-unquote Steeler faithful, when you talk about character, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, LeGarrette Blount, Ben Roethlisberger, need I go on?
Well,
Don't give me character with some of the guys that have been through. That's like saying the Dallas Cowboys need to, be selective because they can't sign guys who have been to jail. It's like, have you seen the roster from before?
no, have you seen the league?
Yeah, exactly. So come on now. But Taylor Lewan has the feel of a Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, character, get out of here, Pittsburgh. And then Marcus Peters, I didn't think of Arizona for him because I feel like he wants to go to a winning team. And I have a team, and maybe like you kind of mentioned a guy with a proponent for interceptions, Justin. Now, I think if he had went to the Eagles, he maybe has to play more of that CJ-GJ rule where he kind of has to play a little bit more safety because like they have their corners in Bradbury and Slay. But if there's a possibility that Peters could play a safety spot on a secondary, let's say, there's a team that lost 2 starting safeties in that AFC North in the Cincinnati Bengals who they need interception help. They need defensive backfield help. And that team has had Pac-Man Jones before. So, I mean, would Marcus Peters really be that big of a difference? Just saying. I'm just saying. They've had Vontaze Burfict before. I don't think when you've had some of these guys, I don't think you could point out character.
I do want to know, and it's kind of a philosophical discussion in a way. How hard is it to transition from cornerback to safety?
I think we would need an expert on that shit on the show to talk about that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like I know we're talking about Peters in that role, but how hard would it be for a guy to do that? Because it's relatively it's a similar position, but it's so different in a way too. So
yeah, I think part of it might be like understanding your role in the scheme. I think that would play a part of it. I think that might be the biggest thing, honestly. Again, that's why we want an expert. Hey, if by chance a quarterback or safety watches this show, even if you played in college only, Frick, we'll take you up on message.
If you play D3, we're still going to talk to you.
Probably. You know what? Yeah. We take on all comers. We love guests at any point. There's only going to be one ever first-time guest in the show's history. Like,
it's true.
The first ever guest we have, you'll be the only first ever guest in the show history. I'm just saying, it's wide
open.
Pretty
high honor
for anyone to take. So,
and whoever does, we'll have Boston Market on Justin at the end of the episode.
You got Justin's card information, Rick?
All right. Yeah, of course I do.
Perfect. All right. So those are the biggest names available in free agency that I had. Let's move on to a couple of young guys here that are on the market. They've had relatively, semi-brief stints in this league, and maybe they just need to change the scenery. Ironically, we talked about Yannick Ngakoue because he's had so much success. This is ironic. This is the guy that he got traded for last year. That's also a free agent still, funny enough, who's relatively young. Rock Ya-Sin as a cornerback. He's been a fine corner. Nothing crazy, nothing special, but he's been good. And do we have any thoughts about where Rock Ya-Sin could go in general?
I mean, it's so weird that he's not, somewhere at this point, right? Because he is young enough.
He's a good player. Like, just generally, he's a good player.
He's a very good player. I think he might not be the right fit for the scheme because I know that this team does run a few different schemes that might not really include him, but their depth is in question. Baltimore. Because Marlon Humphrey is your corner one. You need someone else in depth there. And again, Wink Martindale is with the Giants now, but Michael McDonald hasn't really shown a whole propensity to do any kind of different scheme, that's different away. So I think you add a little more depth because, Jalen Armour-Davis was hurt. They had a lot of guys that were hurt. So you bring in more depth on that side. It'll help them out. And he's still got a lot of time to play and be reliable. I know he's kind of had some injury questions here or there, but it's another body, and Baltimore needs another body in that secondary. So,
that's not bad.
Where did he play last year?
The Raiders.
He was on the Raiders.
He was traded, right? He was traded in the
Ngakoue deal.
Yeah, he was on the Colts. They traded him to the Raiders for Ngakoue.
Interesting. Yeah, I like the Ravens here. Listen, I think I would look into maybe the Colts, going back to the Colts as well. I mean, they seem to be losing guys in that secondary. It's a fine young player. They had a really good defense last year. They're going to need a starter now that they got rid of Stephon Gilmore. Maybe he comes and fits in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, potentially. All right. Another young defensive back in the field, and I didn't even realize that he was a free agent until Justin actually pointed out to me. So shout out. This is a great pull by Justin. This guy's not going to turn 26 until towards the end of the season. He was born in December of 1997. So shout out to our 97 babies here, because I am one. Taylor Rapp, the former Los Angeles Ram, on that Super Bowl winning team. He was a great player when he was in college. Two-time first team All Pac-12, Pac-12 Defensive Freshman of the Year in his days when he was at Washington. Good safety, relatively speaking. Why he's not on a team? I have no idea. Where could he potentially fit, boys? I mean, I know I mentioned Marcus Peters for the Bengals earlier, but if the Bengals want to go for a more traditional safety, I mean, why not go with a guy who you faced in the Super Bowl before?
Because they have competition in their own division for this guy. I think Pittsburgh.
Ooh, we're just putting so many guys on the Steelers.
Pittsburgh did lose Terrell Evans though, so that's an immediate swap and replacement. And you're right, this guy is young and he's a very good player. He's a very good player for being so young. So I think he fits. I think he fits the Steelers mold. You're right, the Bengals do need some safety help here, but I'll be darned if the Steelers don't try and make a move here for him. Yeah.
Terrell Edmonds signed with the Eagles, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Just so he stays in the state of Pennsylvania. He just goes across the state, basically. I made that drive, Philly, Pittsburgh, pretty far.
It's not a fun drive at all. I've driven from here to Erie, and that's even worse.
Ooh,
yeah.
Ooh. Well, you've
made 8 hours straight and then an hour north.
You've made some trips into Pennsylvania, Rick. Where
I have.
We could tell some tales. You know,
we could.
Dead men tell no tales. No, on this podcast, dead men tell tales.
Yes,
we'll tell some tales later in the offseason. Justin, Taylor Rapp. We mentioned the Bengals. We mentioned the Steelers. Feels like he's an AFC North guy. Are you going to mention the Browns or the Ravens, or who else we got here?
I'm going to mention both the Browns. No, I don't know how much money they're willing to tie up in another safety, but the Seahawks had some issues last year in their secondary. And I know that they have about $100 million tied up in Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams. But Jamal Adams has not been a consistent player for them. And Quandre Diggs, while he's played well, he needs some help. They did draft Tariq Woolen last year. They have a lot of youth in that safety spot. But they're going to need someone to make big plays when the time comes. And that's something that they struggled with a lot last year. So maybe he stays in his own division and he goes over to the Seahawks.
I don't dislike that. I think it's a good addition for that young core on the secondary side. And like you said, adding him to that team with Tariq Woolen, who was tied for the lead, I think, in interceptions last year. A lot of youth, a lot of excitement, a lot of interesting stuff in Seattle for them for sure.
Yeah. Last young player that we have here. This guy is not going to turn 25 until later in the summer. Missed all of 2021 due to injury. Missed a good chunk of 2022 due to injury. This is really snaked in the last couple of years. Irv Smith Jr., tight end. He's got some physical tools. He just hasn't played enough on the field. And really, with him, you're talking about this is the definition of probably more than just one year prove deal. Like this is probably going to be a case where a team signs him for a year. And then if they like to, maybe they sign him for just one more year, and then you wait and see. On the positive, he's still super young. You can sign him to like 2 or 3 1-year deals in a row that by the time he's actually played well enough, if he stays healthy, he'll still technically be like at his peak of power. So maybe there's that. But Irv Smith Jr., just like it's been unfortunate, at least for me, on what's happened to him, because I thought he was going to be pretty solid coming out. But Justin, Irv Smith Jr., who could take a flyer on a young tight end?
Miami. They just lost Gesicki. They traded a backup tight end in the Rams deal. They have needed the position. They struggled with it last year. Their tight ends did almost nothing offensively. This is a guy that can come in here. He can block, and he's a guy that gets lost in the secondary when he splits out. He could really make a good addition there, unfortunately.
Nice. Unfortunately. Rick, what do you think?
If we do another wheel this year where we're talking about guys who need to perform better, Irv Smith's got to be back on there because he was on the wheel last time. And it didn't work out for him this year, so he's got to be there. Miami's a really good shot. Green Bay is also a good shot. If they don't keep Mercedes Lewis, that tight end room is terrible.
I see no reason why he would want to stay if Rodgers isn't there.
When your returning tight end 1 played football at UConn, you need a lot of help. And let me tell you something. Pairing him with Jordan Love, you got some youth there with Christian Watson there. It's a total changing of the guard if you're the Packers. Why not bring him in and see what he can do. He's still got some leg. He's still got some pop. So maybe he can be a good guy for them in that room. But yeah, losing Tanya, losing Lewis, bring in Irv Smith and see what he can do.
Justin, I'm sorry to do this to you, but because Irv Smith Jr. did go to Alabama, he knows how to block. I thought of the Patriots in terms of a team that could just take a flyer on him.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense, but they did just re-sign. They did just sign Gesicki, and they have Hunter Henry. So
true, but neither of them can block to save their lives, especially Gesicki.
Wow.
Like, there's a reason why he was potentially on the outs of Miami even at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
you give him a year. I feel like with Irv Smith, because again, he's so young. You literally just give him a year to learn the Patriot system, to learn the quote-unquote Patriot way, and he sees those two guys in front of him be freaking schlubs with Mac Jones. And then 2024, Bailey Zappi and Irv Smith Jr.,
I can see it now. I can just see it now. It's great. We're going to will Bailey Zappi into a legendary career because of our discussions about him.
This show is a fan of just random backups on the New England Patriots, despite all the pain the Patriots have caused to people on this podcast.
As much as we don't like celebrating when people got released, we were all celebrating when Brian Hoyer got released because we knew Bailey Zappi is one step away from being the starting quarterback.
I mean, Brian Hoyer's probably going to sign there and at the preseason for like a $500,000 deal or something. Can you do like one consistent 1 day contracts with a player or like 1 week? Like, imagine the Patriots just keep signing Brian Hoyer to 1 week deals every week.
Yeah. You know what, Brian? This week we didn't like you. We're cutting you. Okay.
They just constantly, because like in the NBA they have like 10-day deals. Like
Brian Hoyer, you didn't show up for practice all this week, Coach. It was Christmas week. Yeah, no, you're cut. Get off.
Imagine they just keep signing him to 1
July.
week. That would be freaking hilarious. Oh my god. Okay. That aside, that was the last young player that I had listed. Is there anyone I'm missing in terms of like the young players, guys, or are we good to move on?
Yeah, I think we're good. There's no one else that I can think of that's a big guy. Maybe the one guy is John Johnson that I'm thinking about because he when he was a free agent last time out, he got a big deal from Cleveland, and it didn't really pan out that well. But he's still 27 as a safety, so he could be a guy you take a flyer on. I mean, his deal with Cleveland was 3 years and $34 million. And the funny thing is, this is the first time that we're talking about John Johnson in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
That kind of gives you an indication of how well that contract went.
His name has never came up on this podcast before.
No, never. Never.
We've talked Josh Johnson.
We've
talked about several people's with maybe the first name John or the last name Johnson. Never
together. Right.
Never together.
Yeah.
Never. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that. We move on from that. To the guys who are still veterans, the big names that we mentioned earlier were veterans, but these are guys who are veterans who injuries or didn't play that great last year, maybe fit on the team wasn't the best. At the end of the day, they're just free agents now, but they could still very much contribute. We're going to go rapid fire here. Just give me a quick team on, we don't have to go through all these guys, or we could just go rapid fire here, boys. Or if you just don't care about this player, you could both just say skip and we just move. First one, Jadeveon Clowney.
New Orleans.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Justin.
This is a good one.
I have, because he just needs to go to a team where he's going to get playing time and maybe they could pay him. This team needs a stopgap on that defensive line. I say Arizona Cardinals.
Cowboys.
Yeah, that makes sense for a character fit. Leonard Floyd.
Ooh. Leonard Floyd. That's a good one.
Yeah. Very good with the Rams, by the way. Only reason they cut him is just because they had to clear out so much salary. But he was actually very good with the Rams. I think 19 sacks over the last 2 seasons.
Arizona.
Wow, it's not bad.
Reunite him with Chicago.
Ooh, do you think there's good feelings there?
I
don't think
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think they parted on bad terms.
No, he didn't part on bad terms, and he's proven in the last 3 years that he's at least, if not productive, at least reliable at being on the field. So
very true.
Bears need that.
Yeah, very, very much so. I'm kind of with you guys on that. I'm trying to think if there was like another. This team could definitely fit him. I would trust these guys to be able to fit him, but you still need more pass rush next to Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd from the Rams to the 49ers. That would be dangerous.
I like that.
Speaking of guys who are dangerous, this guy is very good in the postseason. Frank Clark.
Ravens.
for no real reason or thought process. Vikings.
It's a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Rick actually. I'll go with the Vikings there because I feel like Frank Clark wants to. He's been on a team now that's won a Super Bowl. He's been on good teams. I think he wants to just keep the good vibes rolling.
Yeah.
Signed like a 1-year deal with a pretty good team. Have like a 10-sack season, make the playoffs, and get one last like 3-year deal next season. Do it. I think he's what 30.
Yeah, he's 30.
Like
he's 30.
He's got one more 3-year deal left in him.
Definitely.
This guy did not go well for him. Which I mean, you kind of signed yourself up for that when you went to the Tennessee Titans. Bud Dupree.
I mean, if we're talking about guys that need to go somewhere where the help is needed, Giants.
Yeah, it's a good shout.
Yeah, they need a linebacker.
A team that has gone with random old guys to put next to Myles Garrett before to try to help with some pass rush. Browns. I can see him going to Cleveland. These next few are kind of paired together because similar situation for these next two and then the two after them. Jarvis Landry and Julio Jones. Old wide receivers, kind of really at the end of their careers. Is there one last spot somewhere out there for Julio Jones, a future Hall of Famer? Jarvis Landry, a pretty good player.
Jarvis back to the Saints, Julio to the Hall of Fame.
So Julio Jones' retirement.
Jarvis back to the Saints, I agree with. I think Julio with the Chargers.
Ooh.
Just because I think a little more depth there, and he gets the ball from Justin Herbert. Why not?
Yeah, I'll go there with you guys. I'll say Jarvis back to the Saints as well because I just don't think like it makes sense for him to go to another team right now. Julio to a team that they I think it was 2 years ago. I want to say they signed an older receiver at the back end of his career. Arizona Cardinals. They've been a retirement home before for old guys, so why not? They just did that for AJ Green. Give that to Julio. Yep. Again, two guys paired with one another, similar skill position. Same skill position, I should say. Leonard Fournette and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt allegedly could have been traded at the trade deadline. Nothing ever materialized. I think to this day, I think maybe it's because the Browns tried to ask for too much and just no one was going to be willing to pay that. Although Kareem Hunt's still relatively a good contributor for the most part. Leonard Fournette just fell off last season. Like nothing worked in Tampa Bay last year, and he's one of the guys that like it just didn't work. He was ineffective in the running game, and the lack of running game is what made that team just not that good.
Both Los Angeles. Fournette to the Rams, Kareem Hunt to the Chargers.
Kareem Hunt to the Falcons. So I think with Allgaier there, he could be a good RB2, especially with Patterson. And Leonard Fournette to the Cowboys.
So Ronald Jones just cannot escape Leonard Fournette taking his spot.
He can't. But I mean, I think you have two guys because again, you don't know what Pollard is right now after the leg injury. So have two guys that are in there, have them compete, and then when Pollard gets back, whoever wins the competition is your RB2.
Yeah, actually, you know what? That works. Kareem Hunt for me, Seattle Seahawks. I feel like you would work really well with Kenneth Walker there in the backfield. I feel like that's good. Because I think the way to go about it is if you're going to go top two running backs play the most, they got to have a bit of differing skill sets. I feel like Kenneth Walker, while he can pass catch, he could just absolutely bowl over some guys. Whereas Kareem Hunt, I feel like him as pass catcher extraordinaire would be fantastic. So I say Kareem Hunt to the Seahawks. Leonard Fournette, playoff Lenny, as he called himself. He's a straight up like he could pass catch a little bit. He kind of did that in Tampa, but like we know he's run first. So if I had to try to put him on a team that's like definitively run first, actually, I have
another team in mind for Fournette as well.
Who do you got?
Titans. RB2 for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, you know what? That's not bad. I would say Fournette. You know what? Wait, hold on. Who is the backup running back in Indianapolis?
Well, who was it? It was Nyheim Hines. Then he got traded.
And then they traded Zach Moss.
Did they really play Zach Moss?
They didn't really play Zach Moss, did they?
I don't know.
Zach Moss is their RB2.
Kind of torn on that because I feel like to keep with my idea of fit, Leonard Fournette to the Bengals. Joe Mixon again, he could do both. I think Leonard Fournette to the Bengals could be something.
Yeah.
We really have a lot of AFC North teams making moves that they probably won't even make. All right, and last name I have here. He was cut by his team. I think he didn't play the entirety of last season. I'm putting him here because I'm assuming he's going to be playing next year. Byron Jones.
I thought you were going with Calais Campbell.
I mean, we could mention.
No.
No.
Byron Jones also a guy who can make that transition to the safety spot if he can't play corner anymore.
Yeah, and you know what? I put Byron Jones on Philly because of that. I think he's still got something in the tank there, and I know he didn't play last year, but he's still a reputable, serviceable secondary guy, so I put him on Philadelphia.
I agree with that. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. I will three-peat it like the Eagles. They just need more. They need more, and that's how you do it. Or underrated team. Again, I mentioned them earlier. I think they could go for it again. They need secondary help. I think this is the weakest part of their defense, secondary. San Francisco. I think the 49ers, the biggest weakness of this.
They were banged up last year in their secondary.
They were.
But they still weren't the best when they were 100% healthy, man.
The biggest all-pro year.
The biggest weakness of San Fran over the last 4 or 5 years of success with Shanahan has been the secondary and the defensive side of the ball. Whether it's even after they traded DeForest Buckner, you still have Nick Bosa being the guy on that defensive line. You have Warner and Greenlaw on the linebacking crew. It's always been that secondary that has been a weakness for them.
I mean, currently their corners are Trevarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, Ambry Thomas.
You made up a Madden name right there with that second corner.
Isaiah Oliver, Samuel Womack.
I'm not saying he's not a good player. Who again? Who's the second corner?
Diamador Lenore.
What? What?
He was Diamador Lenore was.
Look, I'm not disrespecting him, but they need bodies.
Yeah, he's got 82 tackles in 2 seasons. Lenore.
They need
out
more.
Of Oregon.
They need way more there.
Yeah. That's fair.
You mentioned Rick Calais Campbell. Anybody?
I think this is it. I think unfortunately the sting of being cut by the team that you wanted to go back to so badly just should tell you that it's over for Calais Campbell. Unfortunately,
he's getting a lot of meetings though. He's actually coming up to the Jets this week.
He's a good mind, and I think he can transition to a coaching role really well. But I think his playing days are numbered. I think if you want to sign Calais Campbell, you sign Justin Houston because he's the same player, just 3 years younger.
Yeah, Justin
great run stuffer, and I think in a 4-3 when you have a young defense like the Jets are a good example. I know he's also meeting with the Bills, who could use some help in the center. I think that he's got, situationally, he's got some left in the tank. I don't know if he's got more than 1 year, maybe 2, but
I wouldn't be surprised if either Houston or Campbell ends up signing in Philly with the amount of just random old defensive linemen that they were acquiring last season. Think about it. Robert Quinn, Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. There's a lot of different guys that they added to that defensive line. And they didn't not all of them really played that often, just situationally, like Justin said. So if you're talking about a team that could use any of those guys situationally, I think the Eagles would definitely come a calling for either of them. But yeah, I think for the most part, that's just about the end of the list here.
Yeah. I was going to say,
that's the
Eagles are going old. How's BJ Raji? Is he still available? Or he's retired for a few years?
Yeah. BJ Raji, anyone? No? All right, fair enough. All right, so that finishes the football portion of the show, ladies and gentlemen. So fun football. Let's get to the chaos. So as we've joked about on this show, Rick has officially denounced his fandom for the Jets.
Yes,
but he did give them a chance to win him back. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard of March Madness, but I give you Renting Rick's Ridiculous Rooting Interest Revival Bracket. So off show, because this would have been way too long if we had done all 32 teams, we put all 32 NFL teams in a bracket. And we ended up going with and deciding how is it that Rick was going to get his new team. Well, I mean, you guys know how the show works. There's only one way to decide that. The Wheel of Chaos has returned.
So really the sixth member of our show, if you count, whatever mascot is next and the dog. So, yeah.
So 7 because the previous mascot exists. So Sienna, Sandoval, the next mascot, 7th member. But the wheel was there before, at least before Sandoval. So really the 5th member all time of the show.
That's true.
The Wheel of Chaos. And it will always be this wheel no matter what, ladies and gentlemen. So we divided it into 4 regions and we have 8 teams left. So shall we begin the spinning, boys?
Sure.
So in this first region here, a matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Buffalo Bills, the Victor Crumb regional final. As a homage for anybody in this world that actually watched that episode where me and Rick just took over. We just did a Harry Potter quiz. Who will?
This is one of those regions for me that can go burn in the fire because, yeah, it's gonna be bad. How bad is it gonna be?
Pretty bad.
Pretty
How
bad.
is compared to your old fandom?
Pretty bad.
Man, I was rooting for the Raiders.
In a way, I was too, because like in good conscience, can I really do that?
Yes.
Switch teams
Yeah,
into the
who
division.
denounces their fandom in the first place? I don't
Well-
think you have any. Come on, man. I don't have any standards for you at this point. You're gonna go right to the Bills? I wouldn't be shocked. You just blew out my team.
Well, I mean, true, but at the same time, like, you know, it's I don't know. I'm hoping this is as far as they get because, you know, I'm not thrilled about the prospect of buying a Buffalo Bills jersey. So,
Yeah, let's see the next one.
yeah, looks like Jerg's muted.
My bad. In the Fleur Delacour region, I'm moving a lot of moving parts here. In the Fleur Delacour region final, you have the New York Giants versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is one of the ones that Rick wants to win here, Justin. He's cool with either one here. So let's see.
No problem with either one of these teams.
I'm glad one of them's getting eliminated.
Well, there you go. You just want to watch the world burn, which I respect. But, you know.
Do you get one more click? It's right there.
No click.
Steelers.
Okay. It's fine. That's fine. I think that one's better just because I don't know if my in-laws would accept the fact that I was switching teams to the Giants. I don't think that would be, you know, fair. So I'm good with that. And again, I do like Pittsburgh. I do like what they've done. So not a bad decision.
It's not a good decision. How could you give up your own team?
Okay, this region can go burn in the fire. Or like Cedric Diggory, which is the regional final team after this one can go get killed by Voldemort in the maze.
Ironically, well, in the graveyard. Technically it was Pettigrew. You know, Harry, you would have been way more logical. Actually, no, they didn't believe Fudge didn't believe Pettigrew was alive.
Whatever.
All right, anyways, the Cedric Diggory final right here. The Tennessee Titans versus the Minnesota Vikings. Rick loses either way here. So let's see. Rick, who do you want? Do you want the team that I constantly bury, or do you want the frauds?
You know, I do want the team that I do want the team to be constantly buried because I mean, you know.
Oh, by the way, Justin Witt's comment of the show. Which one?
That's true. Okay.
I mean, in your mind, Doug?
I was gonna say.
Oh my god.
Oh man, that's yeah.
Oh
that's
my
rough.
god. No, that was the best comment ever in the show's history. Me talking about the Vikings and Titans as if they were different things compared to burying.
It's true. It's very, very true.
Oh my lord.
Okay.
All right. Boys, I'm gonna need you to riff so I can set up the next one real quick.
I don't even know where to go from here at this point. You know, I mean, essentially the way this is going to be, it's either going to be the AFC or the NFC North. That's how it is.
That's fine. I feel like you deserve that.
I mean, you know, like I said,
See, I don't know who I want to win this one more. The worst team in the league last year, or you have to come crawling back.
well, again, whoever wins this plays the Vikings. So I mean, you know, there's something. There's still. I'm not crawling back yet. There's still a couple of other hurdles to get over before I come crawling back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, in the Hadrian Potter region final, and yes, I'm calling him Hadrian because who names their child Harry willingly? In the Hadrian James Potter region final, we have Rick's New York Jets versus the Chicago Bears.
Hey, they're not my New York Jets. They're Justin's.
The formerly known as Rick's New York Jets.
That's
Come
fine.
on, Jets. Come on. This will be
fine.
awesome if the Jets can win this spin.
I really do want a Cole Kmet jersey, so that'd be kind of cool.
What is with you and Cole Kmet?
Oh, dang it.
Man, for the content. We're doing it for the content.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, man.
Uh,
Justin, trust me, if I could have rigged the wheel to get to the Jets, I would have.
there's no rigging of this wheel. The wheel of chaos doesn't get rigged. It does its own thing.
It very much does do its own thing.
Yeah.
Look, it. So who do we have now? We have
Buffalo and Pittsburgh or Minnesota, Chicago. If
man.
it's a Buffalo Minnesota final, I'm walking off this show.
Okay, I'm definitely rooting against Pittsburgh. It didn't matter who was playing them.
But as a Jets fan, why would you want to take the show with somebody who's a Bills fan as well?
I'm all about, talking with all teams. I don't care what team you're a fan of, unless you're like a fraudulent fan that would just leave your lifelong fandom for some random team, especially one in your own division.
That's what I'm saying.
By spinning a wheel.
Like reasonable people would say, why aren't you rooting for a Pittsburgh-Chicago final? Because I
went to school in Buffalo. I used to have discourse with a lot of Buffalo.
I keep forgetting there was a life to you before Queens College, which I'm sure a lot of us forget about too.
I think Justin forgets about it from time to time.
I was going to say, there's that too.
Yeah.
All right, let's spin the wheel.
Okay. Frauds or not frauds?
Frauds are Justin Fields here, basically, is what you're rooting for.
No, PJ Walker.
Let's go Vikings.
Keep going. Keep going.
Oh, yes. Barely.
Okay. I'm good with that.
I gotta say, Justin, expand upon it. I love the fact that you just straight up said you don't deserve to be a Bears or Steelers fan. It is basically weird.
No, he doesn't deserve to be a. I just don't want him to get what he wants. You know what I mean? Like you trash my. We finally have a chance to actually be good for the first time in like a decade, and Rick's like, well, screw this. I'd rather be a fan of a different team. And then he like goes away. He doesn't deserve to be a Steelers fan. First of all, if I was a Steelers fan, I'd be like, stay where you are. All right. I don't want you bringing that curse energy to me. We've had a great history. We've been relevant for many years now. How dare you bring that? And the Bills have also been like fairly good. So I don't want them to root for a winning team. So I guess I would be at this point rooting for the Bears. I was really hoping that the Vikings would take that, but
would it be funny if somehow, some way, like the team that he roots for next season is worse than what they were this year? Like the Bears somehow are like 2 wins.
Can you get any worse than the Bears than they were this past season?
I mean, yes. You could get only 1 or 2 wins.
True. But I mean, technically they had the number 1 overall pick. So can you get worse than that?
No. 0-17.
Yeah. No, if Rick becomes a fan of a team that goes 0-17, that would just be the funniest.
The Carolina Panthers draft a Hall of Fame quarterback, and the Chicago Bears go 0-17.
It's not even my team yet, dude.
Well, let's see. Who will the Bears face in the final here, in the international final? Even though
I don't necessarily wish that upon them.
I was going to say, you can't wish it upon a team that doesn't have my blessing yet, you know?
Oh, man.
Keep going.
I think it's going to be.
Keep going.
It's going to be the Bills. It's going to be the Bills.
Okay,
it's going to be the Bills.
At the buzzer.
Bills versus the Bears. And if we learned anything from last year, I believe these two teams played each other, and it was very, very bad game. I think the Bills won by like 30, if I'm not mistaken. I think Josh Allen didn't play the second half.
You're not wrong. It was 35-13. It was on Christmas Eve.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Well, Merry Christmas, Rick.
There you go.
Now, which version of the Merry Christmas do you get here? Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Rick's new team is decided on a final spin. Again, better than March Madness. The final of Ranting Rick's Ridiculous Rooting Interest Revival Bracket. The winner is...
with only 2 teams.
The only way that I can make this good is if I get the Bills jersey that I think we're all thinking of, I'm getting.
Fred Jackson?
I was going to say DeMar Hamlin, but sure. Stay there.
It's the Bears!
Okay. So, like I was saying.
Cole Kmet, orange jersey. Thank you very much.
Like I was saying, the Carolina Panthers
a Walter Payton jersey. How about that?
3 Super Bowls with the quarterback that they draft this year. And the Chicago Bears will be 0-17 next year. And
but you know what? There's a lot of history and a lot of lineage that I could get with all this. Oh, no, Jerk, for you'll get an Eddie Pinheiro jersey. How's that sound?
Oh, my God. No,
Bears players you could get, you're going to get Eddie Pinheiro?
For the brand.
If he wants to make it worse, he wants to make it a negative version of that, get Cody Parkey, double doink.
Ooh, double doink.
All the history there. And
That's
you're
not bad.
gonna go Pinheiro
Or Cole Kmet for the content.
I mean, if we really wanted to be controversial, if he would have gotten the Bills, we could have made him get an OJ Simpson jersey.
Oh, now that's cruel. No. I'm going to say the name we're all thinking of, Scott Norwood.
Okay, I guess.
Why not?
Do they
Steve.
make Scott Norwood jerseys?
You
Probably
can
not.
customize it, absolutely.
Well, it's true.
Okay.
Oh my God!
They're
So,
down. Let's
ladies and
go.
gentlemen, for the next season, the Chicago Bears have a new fan. They have a new representative here on the program, which is going to be interesting because Rick has been rooting for the Lions over the last first season of the show, so now he kind of has to go against them. But the Chicago Bears get a new acquisition to their fandom via free agency. He demanded his release. His contract was terminated with the Jets.
Wait.
And the Bears.
Not only that, jerk, the Bears also play the Cardinals and the Commanders, who are my other two NFC division champions. Let's go! Let's go!
This worked out so much better than I
Oh
thought.
my God, this was great.
Oh my God! The only thing that could have been better, the Jets. I wish the Jets could have kept him. I wish the Jets would have kept him. Again, if I could have rigged that wheel,
for it to stay a Jet fan, and then I could be like, "Nah, you're gonna have to do this whole bracket over again. I want you to spend the week." And you know what? We could have done however many weeks it takes. We could have done like 2 teams a week, and we could have made
until like the beginning
whole
of the
thing.
season.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm happy with the ending of the show. I don't know about the rest of you, but I mean, I'm thrilled with it. So
Yes, ladies and
Makes no
gentlemen,
difference to me.
there is no Rand podium for this week because we don't have the time, and Rick was literally in the darkness retreat until like half an hour before the show, so he has no idea what has happened aside from all the NFL news we've told him. But we will get a Rand podium again next time, and we will get even more chaos because now it's official. Me, who's a neutral party observer who just buries teams left and right. Justin, who is now the lone Jets fan. So now the number of Jets fans I do in all the podcasts I work with has gone down from 4 to 3. And we now a brand new baptism by fire Chicago Bears fan.
Bears.
Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. As you can tell in the name, this is the most I'm done. Fun chaos on the show. Guys, we'll see you all next week.